A glass rolls slowly across wood. Drip, drip, silence. Don't sign it. The wine spreads across the signature line, swallowing the ink before it can dry. What did you just say? Her breath is close to his ear now. Your translator is lying. The pen stops mid-stroke. No music. Just the faint hum of the restaurant and the sound of someone's breathing turning heavier. In that moment, 3 things were ruined. A pause. The contract. A flicker of red across paper. The trust. The translator blinking, confused. And someone's future. He doesn't look at her yet. He looks at the stain. Because powerful men don't panic. They calculate. When powerful men shake hands, they assume the language is honest. She leans closer. He changed 1 word. The paper trembles slightly in his grip. 1 word now bleeding under wine. And 1 word can start a war. Now he turns. Slowly. The translator is still unaware. Still shocked at the spill. Still thinking this is an accident. The problem wasn't the wine. It was the translation. He doesn't confront him immediately. That's what makes it worse. He wipes his fingers slowly on a napkin. Calm. Too calm. The translator starts talking fast now, apologizing about the spill, about the delay, about printing another copy. He doesn't realize the boss isn't listening to him anymore. He's listening to the silence between the waitress's words. 1 word, she had said. He looks back at the contract. The clause about ownership. The clause about control. The clause about inheritance. His jaw tightens. Read that line again, he says quietly. The translator hesitates. It says you retain 40%. Read it in Korean. The translator swallows. And for the first time he stumbles. The waitress steps back like nothing happened. Like she's just another server cleaning up a mistake. But the boss isn't looking at the contract anymore. He's looking at the translator. Because now it's not about business. It's about betrayal. And betrayal in his world is not corrected. It's punished. He closes the folder. Slowly. If she's wrong, he says without raising his voice. You walk away rich. A pause. But if she's right. He doesn't finish the sentence. He doesn't have to. The translator's face drains of color. And that's when the waitress realizes something terrifying. She didn't just ruin a deal. She may have started something she can't stop. If you think she did the right thing, stay. If you think she just signed her own death sentence, you're about to find out. But listen carefully, because in this story, the most dangerous weapon isn't a gun. It's a sentence. And someone is still lying. Before we go further, I need you to decide something. If you were in his seat right now, would you trust the waitress? Or the man who speaks your language? Don't just watch. Choose. Comment waitress if you think she saved him. Comment translator if you think she's manipulating him. Because in the next few minutes, one of them is going to lose everything. And I want to see who you were brave enough to stand with. The translator's face drains of color. And that's when the waitress realizes something terrifying. She didn't just ruin a deal. She may have started something she can't stop. Her name is Linda. And 5 minutes ago, she was just a waitress refilling glasses. Now she's standing between a mafia boss and a lie that could cost millions. Or lives. The man at the center of the table isn't just any businessman. His name is Kang Jae-Min. In Seoul's underworld, people don't say it loudly. They lower their voices. And the man who's suddenly struggling to breathe across from him? That's Park Min-soo, the translator. The only bridge between 2 languages. The only man who controls what Kang understands. Or misunderstands. Kang slowly looks up. Linda, he says, testing her name like it's fragile. Repeat what you just told me. The entire table goes still. Because now this isn't about spilled wine. It's about whether Linda just accused a man of betrayal in front of the most dangerous person in the room. And betrayal, in Kang Jae-Min's world, is not corrected. It is erased. If you're still here, good. Because from this moment on, every word matters. Stay sharp. Linda already knows what happens when powerful men discover they've been lied to. And tonight, someone won't walk out of this restaurant the same way they walked in. Linda doesn't step back. She doesn't apologize. She doesn't even look at Park. Her eyes stay locked on Kang Jae-Min. Because in rooms ruled by power, the first person who looks away loses. He changed the ownership clause, she says quietly. In English, it says partnership. In Korean, it says transfer. Park laughs. Too fast. That's ridiculous. She doesn't even read Korean. Kang doesn't turn to him. He's still watching Linda. How do you know? He asks. The restaurant noise thins out, like the rest of the world has stepped outside this table. Linda inhales once. My brother signed a contract like that, she says. It was written one way in English and another way in Yoruba. Park stiffens. She continues. They told him it meant collaboration. A beat. It meant surrender. Park shifts in his chair. This is insane. She spilled wine. Now she's inventing drama. Read it, Kang says. No raised voice. No visible anger. That's what makes Park's hands tremble. He pulls a second copy from his briefcase. Smooth paper. Clean ink. No wine to hide behind. He begins reading in Korean. Measured. Careful. When he reaches the ownership clause, he moves slightly faster and skips a word. Linda hears it. Kang hears it. The silence that follows isn't loud. It's heavy. Again, Kang says. Park hesitates. And that hesitation says more than any translation ever could. Because Kang Jae-Min does not speak Yoruba fluently. But he has spent enough time in Lagos to recognize keywords. Enough to recognize gbagbo. Enough to recognize a with grave. Authority. He doesn't need to understand every syllable. He understands omission. Park clears his throat. It was a minor adjustment. Kang stands. Chairs scrape softly across marble. Other diners pretend not to notice. A minor adjustment, Kang repeats. Linda steps back now. Not in fear. In understanding. This is no longer her accusation. It is his conclusion. You altered my authority, Kang says. Park's voice cracks. It was temporary. Just leverage. Leverage. Wrong word. In a world built on dominance, leverage is a confession. Linda closes her eyes for half a second, because she knows that word doesn't translate well in rooms like this. Kang turns back to her. You read Yoruba, he says. Yes. You read Korean? Enough. He studies her, not like a waitress, not like a witness, like an asset. You risked your life for this? He asks. It isn't gratitude. It's analysis. Linda answers without drama. I risked it because someone needed to understand what he was signing. The air shifts again. Kang looks at Park, then back at Linda, then at the contract. A ruined document, a broken trust, corrected lie. He laughs once. Short, cold, not amused, impressed. And that's when Linda understands something deeper. She didn't just expose a mistranslation. She exposed control. Park wasn't translating words. He was translating power. And she just took it back. In Kang Jae-Min's world, people who see what others miss are never ignored. They are either eliminated or recruited. He adjusts his cuff slowly. Linda, he says. Her name no longer sounds small in this room. You no longer work here. A pause. Park's breath catches. You work for me. And just like that, the waitress who interrupted a Mafia deal becomes the most dangerous person at the table. Park doesn't move. He's still sitting, still holding the contract. Like if he doesn't stand, none of this becomes real. You work for me? Kang repeats. Linda doesn't answer immediately, because that wasn't an offer. It was a repositioning. Park finds his voice first. You can't be serious, he says, looking at Kang. She's a waitress. She embarrassed you in front of investors. Investors. Kang interrupts calmly. The word lands like a correction. They were partners. Park quickly adjusts. Were. Kang notices that too. He walks around the table slowly. Not toward Linda. Toward Park. You translated for me for 3 years, Kang says quietly. 3 years. Park stands now. And I protected your interests. Did you? Silence. Kang stops behind him. Or did you protect your own? Park's breathing changes. He calculates escape. He calculates denial. He calculates how much Kang truly understands Yoruba. Linda watches all of it. Because this isn't about language anymore. It's about exposure. Kang reaches forward and takes the clean copy of the contract from Park's hand. He hands it to Linda. Translate, he says. The entire restaurant holds its breath. Park laughs weakly. You're going to trust her over me? I am not trusting, Kang replies. I am verifying. Linda looks down at the paper. The ink is clean here. No whine. No blur. No excuses. She reads the English clause first. Then the Korean. Then the Yoruba addendum at the bottom. Her voice is steady, but not loud. In English, she begins. It says strategic partnership with shared equity. She shifts. In Korean, it says conditional transfer of executive authority upon first shipment clearance. A ripple moves through the men at the table. And then, in Yoruba, she continues, it says complete surrender of controlling rights after the first transaction. She looks up. No performance. No triumph. Just clarity. Park's face collapses. You don't understand context. I understand grammar, she says. Kang takes the document back slowly. He looks at Park. Not angry. Not explosive. Worse, disappointed. You were the only voice I trusted in rooms I could not control, Kang says softly. Park swallows. It was leverage. Temporary leverage. Once the shipment cleared, we would renegotiate. Renegotiate. Kang repeats. You rewrote my authority. A long pause. The investors at the table exchange nervous glances. This is no longer their deal. This is internal. And internal matters are the most dangerous. Kang adjusts his cufflinks. Leave, he says to the investors. They don't argue. They stand. They go. Within seconds, the restaurant shrinks to 3 people. Kang, Park, Linda. Park turns to Linda suddenly. You think he'll protect you? He says quietly. You think exposing me makes you safe? Linda doesn't answer, because she already understands something Park doesn't. Safety was never on the table. Kang steps closer to Park. You changed my language, Kang says. That means you believed I wouldn't notice. Park's voice lowers. You don't speak Yoruba. Kang's expression doesn't shift. No, he agrees. But I understand fear. And right now, Park is terrified. Kang turns to Linda. One last question. Her heart pounds once. Hard. How many other contracts would I need to review? That's the real danger. Not this deal, but the pattern. Linda hesitates. Just enough to be honest. If this one was altered, she says carefully, it's unlikely it was the only one. The silence that follows is colder than the first. Because now this isn't about betrayal tonight. It's about betrayal for years. Kang nods once, then looks at Park. You have until sunrise, he says evenly, to bring me every document you've ever translated. Park blinks. And if I don't? Kang doesn't raise his voice. Then I will assume the worst. He turns away. Conversation over. Park stands there a moment longer, then leaves. Slow. Unstable. The doors close behind him. Now it's just Kang and Linda. The power in the room feels different. Not explosive. Focused. Kang studies her again. You interfered in a room where you had no authority, he says. Yes. You embarrassed my translator. Yes. You risked becoming a problem. Yes. A beat. And yet, he steps closer. You were correct. The word lands heavy. Linda doesn't smile. Because approval from a man like Kang Jae-Min isn't comfort. It's responsibility. You said your brother lost everything, Kang says. Yes. Who translated his contract? Linda's jaw tightens. A man who told him not to worry. Kang nods once. That man is fortunate, he says quietly. He never met me. The air shifts again. Because this is no longer about a ruined deal. It's about something deeper. Trust, control, and the fact that tonight, Kang Jae-Min just discovered his empire may have been built on altered words. He looks at Linda one more time. You will not serve tables tomorrow, he says. You will serve truth. And in this world, truth is the most dangerous position to hold. Linda doesn't answer immediately, because serve truth sounds noble. But in Kang Jae-Min's world, it sounds like surveillance. He walks past her and sits again, calm as if nothing explosive just happened. Sit, he says. It isn't gentle. It isn't harsh. It's instruction. Linda hesitates for half a second, not out of fear but calculation, then takes the chair Park just vacated. The symbolism is not lost on her. Kang places 3 contracts on the table. Translate this one, he says. She looks down. Different company, different region, different date. Her pulse steadies. He's testing pattern recognition, not memory. She scans quickly. English, Korean. Then her eyes land on a small addendum at the bottom. Not Yoruba this time. Japanese. She looks up. I don't read Japanese, she says honestly. A flicker of something crosses Kang's face. Approval. You did not pretend, he says. She returns her attention to the document. But this, she says, tapping the Korean section, contradicts the English clause again. How? In English, it says performance review after 6 months. In Korean, it says evaluation for transfer of authority. Kang leans back slowly. So it wasn't just one deal. Park hadn't been translating. He'd been editing. For leverage. For control. For something bigger. Why would he do that? Linda asks quietly. Kang studies her. Ambition, he replies. Or protection. Protection from what? Kang doesn't answer immediately, because now something else is forming in his mind. Park didn't just alter words. He altered authority across multiple regions, which means he was preparing for something, or someone. Tell me, Kang says suddenly. When you heard him skip that word, how did you know? Linda thinks carefully. It wasn't just the word, she says. It was his breathing. A pause. He changed tempo. Kang's eyes sharpen. You noticed that? Yes. Why? She meets his gaze steadily. Because people only rush when they're afraid of being heard. Silence. That wasn't language skill. That was behavioral awareness. Kang taps his finger lightly on the table. You said your brother lost everything. Yes. And you watched it happen. Yes. And you did nothing. The words are blunt. Not cruel. But sharp. Linda doesn't flinch. I was 17, she says quietly. I watched adults trust someone who sounded confident. A beat. I promised myself I would never ignore hesitation again. Kang holds her gaze. There it is. Not just intelligence. Discipline born from regret. Park was preparing for leverage, Kang says slowly. Leverage requires exit. Linda processes that. You think he was planning to leave? I think he was planning to control, Kang replies. And men who prepare control clauses across languages do not do it alone. The weight of that settles. The Park wasn't acting alone. Then someone else inside Kang's circle has been listening, approving, benefiting. The room feels colder now. Not from betrayal. From scope. Kang stands again. This does not leave this table, he says. You saw nothing. You heard nothing. Linda nods. And tomorrow? She asks. Kang adjusts his cufflinks. Tomorrow, he says calmly, you will come to my office. Not as a waitress. He pauses. But as my eyes. Linda understands immediately. Not assistant. Not translator. Observer. Verifier. He steps closer, lowering his voice slightly. If Park believes I trust him until sunrise, he will reveal more than documents. And if he runs? She asks. Kang's expression doesn't change. He will not run. Why? Because he believes I still need him. A slow realization dawns. Kang hasn't exposed everything he knows. He hasn't reacted fully. He's staging something. Linda studies him. You're letting him think he's safe. Yes. And he's not. Kang gives a faint, unreadable smile. No. A long silence passes between them. Then he asks the question that shifts everything. Linda, who else knows you can read contracts like that? She hesitates. No one here. That is good. He nods once. Because from tonight forward, he steps toward the door. You are no longer invisible. The words land heavier than any threat. Invisible people are ignored. Visible people are targeted. As Kang exits the restaurant, Linda sits there alone for a moment. The contract still stained with wine. The empty chair park left behind. And the realization that she didn't just correct a translation. She stepped into a power structure built on altered words. Tomorrow she walks into Kang Jae-Min's office. Not as staff, not as guest, but as someone who now sees too much. And in a world like his, seeing too much can get you promoted. Or erased. The next morning, Linda doesn't wear her waitress uniform. She doesn't know what to wear. Too formal looks ambitious. Too simple looks small. She chooses neutral. Quiet confidence. Kang Jae-Min's office sits on the 32nd floor of a glass building that reflects the sky like it owns it. Security doesn't question her. That's the first unsettling thing. They were expecting her. The elevator ride is silent. Mirrored walls. She sees herself from every angle. No apron. No tray. No escape. When the doors open, she doesn't step into a reception area. She steps directly into power. The office is wide, minimal, sharp. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. A long black table. 3 monitors. No clutter. Control without chaos. Kang is already there. Not sitting. Standing at the window. He doesn't turn when she enters. You were on time, he says. Yes. Good. On the table in front of her are 12 folders. Different colors. Different regions. Different dates. Translate nothing yet, he says calmly. Just observe. She steps closer. Opens the first folder. English. Korean. She flips to the signature page. Ownership clause. Performance clause. Transfer clause. Subtle shifts. She opens another. Same pattern. Another. Different region. Same structural imbalance. Not obvious theft. Gradual transfer. Incremental authority erosion. Her stomach tightens. This wasn't random, she says quietly. No, Kang replies. He turns now, and the look on his face isn't anger. It's calculation. They were preparing something, Linda says. Yes. For how long? Longer than you have been serving tables. The air feels heavier, because now this isn't about one disloyal translator. It's about systemic infiltration. Where is Park? She asks. Kang studies her reaction. At sunrise, he says evenly. He arrived with every contract I requested. A beat. And he complied. That's not relief. That's worse. Compliance means confidence. He believes he can explain it, Kang continues. He believes I will forgive ambition. Linda closes a folder slowly. You won't. Kang's mouth almost curves. Ambition is useful. A pause. Deception is not. He walks toward the table. Places one final file in front of her. Thicker. Heavier. Translate this, he says. She opens it. Her pulse spikes. Because this contract isn't between Kang and foreign investors. It's between Kang and one of his internal partners. Signed 2 years ago. The Korean text is clean. The English is aligned. But in the addendum, Yoruba again. She looks up sharply. You operate in Lagos, she says. I operate everywhere, Kang replies. She scans the Yoruba clause. Her chest tightens. This clause activates a silent transfer if you are declared incapacitated. Incapacitated, Kang repeats. Yes. It gives controlling authority to. She stops, looks at the signature. Not Park. Someone higher. Someone closer. Kang watches her carefully. Say it. She swallows. It gives temporary executive control to Director Han. Silence. Director Han. The man who has been at Kang's right hand for a decade. The man who recommended Park. The man who signed this addendum. And the clause is written so subtly that unless you read Yoruba, it looks procedural, not predatory. Linda looks up slowly. This isn't about leverage, she says. It's succession. The word lands hard. Kang doesn't react outwardly, but something shifts behind his eyes, because succession only activates when a leader is removed, or expected to be removed. You said Park wasn't alone, Kang says quietly. Yes, you were correct. The city stretches behind him through glass. Calm, unaware. Linda feels the scale now. This wasn't one altered word. It was infrastructure. Park adjusted language. Director Han adjusted power. And somewhere inside this company, there is a timeline. Kang steps closer. You understand what this means, he says. Yes. They were preparing for you to fall. And now, he asks. Linda meets his gaze. Now they know you're looking. A slow exhale leaves him. Controlled. Measured. Dangerous. No, he says quietly. They believe I am unaware. He closes the file. Which is why you are here. Not as employee. Not as assistant. But as the only person in this building who can read the language hidden in plain sight. Kang moves toward his desk. Director Han will arrive in 15 minutes. Linda's heart kicks once. And Park. He believes he has convinced me. Kang looks at her directly. Tell me, Linda. If a man thinks he is winning, what does he do? She thinks carefully. He gets careless. Faint smile. Good. The office doors remain closed. The clock ticks once. And for the first time, Linda realizes this is no longer about correcting contracts. She is standing at the center of a silent coup. And in 15 minutes, the men who tried to control Kang Jae-Min's empire will walk into a room where the language has changed. The clock ticks once. 15 minutes feels shorter when you know someone is walking into a trap. Linda stands beside the long black table, the file still open in front of her. Director Han's name sits on the page like a quiet confession. Kang doesn't move to sit behind his desk. He remains standing. That's intentional. Power is vertical. Control is posture. The elevator dings outside. Footsteps. Measured. Confident. 3 knocks on the glass door. Not rushed. Not hesitant. Director Han enters without waiting to be invited. Late 50s. Tailored suit. Calm smile. The kind of man who has survived every storm by positioning himself behind the right leader. Jae-Min, Han says warmly. You wanted to see me? He notices Linda. A flicker of confusion. Then dismissal. She's with me, Kang says. Han nods politely. Of course she is. In his mind, she's temporary. Irrelevant. Disposable. Kang gestures toward the table. I reviewed several contracts this morning. Han doesn't blink. Is there an issue? Such a careful word. Issue. Not problem. Not mistake. Issue implies minor. Manageable. Linda watches Han's breathing. Steady. Unthreatened. He believes this is routine. Kang slides one folder forward. Not the Yoruba one. A different contract. One clause caught my attention, Kang says calmly. Han leans in slightly. Relaxed. Which one? The succession contingency. A fractional pause. Barely visible. But it's there. Linda sees it. Han recovers instantly. That clause protects the company in case of unforeseen circumstances. Unforeseen. Kang repeats. Yes. Incapacitation. Legal trouble. Hostile takeover. He speaks smoothly. Prepared. Kang tilts his head slightly. And who determines incapacitation? Han doesn't hesitate. The board. And who influences the board? A softer question. More dangerous. Han's smile tightens by 1 degree. We all do. Kang picks up the contract, flips to the final page, then hands it to Linda. Read the addendum, he says. Han's eyes shift for the first time. Not panic. Alertness. Linda reads in Yoruba. Clear. Measured. The temporary transfer of full executive authority to Director Han upon medical or operational compromise of CEO Kang Jae-Min. She continues. Without requirement of unanimous board consent. Silence. Not dramatic. Not explosive. Just heavy. Han looks at Kang. International legal formatting, he says smoothly. Standard language in West African jurisdictions. Is it? Kang asks. Han doesn't break eye contact. Yes. Linda closes the file slowly. No, she says quietly. The word hangs. Han turns toward her for the first time fully. And now he looks at her differently. Not as staff. As interference. That language bypasses the board, she says calmly. It centralizes authority. Han's tone cools. With respect, you are not part of this company's executive structure. No, Kang says. But she reads what others overlook. Han studies Kang carefully now. The warmth is gone. You believe I intend to replace you? Han asks. Kang doesn't answer directly. I believe, he says slowly. That language reveals intent. Han exhales. Not angry. Calculating. And what about Park? Han asks carefully. The name lands deliberately. Testing. Watching for reaction. Kang's expression doesn't move. What about him? He replies. He handles translations, Han says lightly. If there are inconsistencies, that responsibility would fall to him. A subtle redirection. Linda sees it instantly. Shift blame downward. Protect the top. Kang sees it too. You recommended Park, Kang says calmly. Han nods once. Yes. And you signed this addendum. Yes. And you structured a clause that activates without full board consent. Han's voice lowers slightly. In unstable markets, decisive leadership prevents chaos. There it is. Not denial. Justification. Linda feels the air change. This isn't a coup born from greed. It's ambition dressed as stability. Han steps closer to the table. You built this empire through strength, he says to Kang. But strength requires contingency. And that contingency, Kang replies evenly, places you in control. Han doesn't answer, because that's the truth. Silence stretches. The city glows behind glass. 3 people. 3 different visions of power. Linda suddenly understands something chilling. This wasn't a rushed betrayal. It was a long investment. Park manipulated language. Han positioned authority. And all of it was built slowly enough that Kang wouldn't notice. Until now. Kang closes the file. You are loyal, he says to Han. It almost sounds like a compliment. Of course, Han replies. But loyalty, Kang continues softly, is not the same as patience. Han's eyes narrow slightly. And patience, Kang says, is not the same as control. The tension is no longer subtle. It's visible. Linda feels it in her chest. Because now the question is no longer, did Han plan this? The question is, what does Kang do with a man who positioned himself to inherit everything? Han straightens his jacket. If you are questioning my intentions, he says evenly, say it directly. Kang steps closer. Close enough that their voices don't need to rise. I am not questioning, Kang says. I am observing. A beat. And I am deciding. The room holds still. Because when Kang Jae-Min decides, someone's future changes. And this time, there are no translation errors to hide behind. Han doesn't look away. That's the first thing Linda notices. Men who are guilty often over-explain. Han doesn't. He waits. Because waiting is a power move too. Kang walks past him slowly, toward the window. The city below moves like nothing inside this office matters. You structured the contingency, Kang says calmly. Yes. You recommended Park. Yes. You signed the addendum. Yes. Han doesn't deny a single fact. He reframes nothing. That's what makes him dangerous. And yet, Han adds carefully, everything I did protects this company. Linda feels it. This isn't desperation. It's conviction. Han believes he is right. Kang turns from the window. Protection, he repeats. Yes. In case you fall, Han continues. In case regulators intervene. In case competitors attack. In case I weaken, Kang finishes. Silence. Han doesn't flinch. If leadership falters, he says evenly, the company survives. Linda understands now. This wasn't a coup fueled by hatred. It was ambition fueled by anticipation. Han wasn't planning to remove Kang. He was preparing for the possibility that he might need to. And once that structure exists, temptation follows. Kang walks back toward the table. You built a pathway, he says quietly. A legal one. Yes. And you placed yourself at the end of it. Yes. No apology. No retreat. Linda studies both men. Two predators. Different styles. One direct. One patient. And Park? Kang asks. Han finally hesitates. Not long. But enough. Park ensured language consistency across jurisdictions. Han says. Did he? Kang replies. Han's eyes flick toward Linda for a fraction of a second. There it is. Assessment. He's recalculating her. She speaks before he can redirect again. Park altered multiple contracts, Linda says calmly, in ways that incrementally shifted authority. Han's jaw tightens slightly. That would be his interpretation error, he replies smoothly. No, Linda says. It was structural. Silence. The kind that feels like pressure. Kang picks up the Yoruba contract again. Director Han, he says, voice steady. If I were incapacitated tomorrow, would you return control to the board? Yes. How long would that take? As long as necessary. And if recovery were delayed? We would maintain stability. Maintain. Not return. Linda sees it. The phrasing. Always control. Never surrender. Kang nods slowly. Thank you, he says. The words are neutral. Han studies him carefully. For what? For clarity. Kang closes the file and sets it aside. You will attend tonight's board session, he says evenly. Han's posture shifts slightly. Of course. And you will present a summary of all contingency structures currently in place. A pause. In full. Han understands immediately. Public disclosure. Transparency under scrutiny. He nods once. As you wish. He turns to leave, then pauses at the door. You have built something extraordinary, Han says without looking back. Extraordinary things require insurance. He exits. The door closes. The room exhales. Linda releases a breath she didn't realize she was holding. He's not afraid, she says quietly. No, Kang replies. He is disciplined. That makes him harder. Yes. Kang returns to the table. He opens another file. Then another. Not frantic. Systematic. Park was the instrument, he says calmly. Han was the architect. And now, Linda asks. Kang looks at her directly. Now we observe who else signed. A chill runs through her. Because conspiracies of this scale rarely involve two people. And if there are more? She asks. There are always more, Kang replies. He closes the final folder. Tonight, he says, they will believe they are securing the future. He looks out at the city again. They do not yet realize the future has shifted. Linda understands something deeply unsettling. Kang isn't reacting. He's restructuring. Silently, deliberately. You're not removing him, she says. No. Why? Because removal reveals fear. A beat. Exposure reveals loyalty. Linda processes that. At tonight's board meeting, every reaction will reveal alignment. And anyone who flinches will identify themselves. Kang turns back to her. You asked earlier if Park would run. Yes. He won't, Kang says calmly. Because he still believes Han will protect him. Linda's stomach tightens. You're going to let them speak. Yes. And when they do? Kang's voice lowers slightly. Then I will know who speaks my language. Not Korean. Not English. Not Yoruba. Power. The office falls quiet again. Outside, the city remains unaware. Inside, a silent war has begun. And by tonight, someone will realize they translated the future incorrectly. Night falls slowly over the city. Not dramatic. Not stormy. Just quiet. Too quiet. The board doesn't meet in the main conference hall. That would be expected. Kang chose a private dining suite inside his own building. Long table. Low lighting. No assistants. No recording devices. Just 12 seats. And 12 people who believe they understand how power works. Linda stands near the far wall. Not introduced. Not acknowledged. But present. And presence changes dynamics. Director Han enters first. Calm. Measured. Park follows behind him. Composed. Too composed. They take their seats like nothing has shifted since morning. Kang enters last. No announcement. No greeting. He sits. No one else does until he does. Control is subtle. Thank you for coming, Kang says evenly. No warmth. No hostility. Tonight is not a vote. That immediately alters posture around the table. It is a review. Director Han nods once. Prepared. Park folds his hands. Controlled. Kang slides a thin folder to the center of the table. One clause, he says quietly. That is all we are discussing. Han reaches for the document first. Confidence. He flips to the page. Reads. Expression unchanged. Standard contingency language. Han says smoothly. Insurance. Insurance, Kang repeats. Yes. Insurance implies risk, Kang says. Yes. What risk did you foresee? Han answers without hesitation. Regulatory interference. Market volatility. Political shifts in foreign territories. Logical. Clean. Prepared. Kang nods slowly. And who suggested the language structure? Han gestures slightly toward Park. Translation consistency across jurisdictions required adaptation. Park inclines his head. I ensured clarity, he says. Clarity. Linda almost smiles. Kang leans back in his chair. Clarity, he repeats. Then he looks at one of the quieter board members. Director Cho. You signed this addendum. Cho stiffens slightly. Yes. Did you read it? A pause. Yes. In which language? Cho hesitates. In Korean. And the Yoruba clause? Kang asks softly. The word lands heavier than expected. Yoruba. 3 board members shift in their seats. Han's fingers tighten subtly. There was no need to review regional formatting, Han says calmly. Kang ignores him. Director Cho, he says again. Did you review the Yoruba clause? Cho swallows. No. The room temperature changes. Because now it's not just about Han. It's about who signed what they didn't understand. Kang stands. Not suddenly. Deliberately. He walks behind the chairs slowly. Insurance, he says quietly, only works when everyone understands the terms. Park speaks carefully. The addendum was procedural. Was it? Kang asks. He stops behind Park. Close enough that Park's breathing shifts. Linda notices. Kang places a second document on the table. Older. Different date. Different region. Another Yoruba addendum. I reviewed 12 contracts today, Kang says evenly. 12. He lets the number sit. Each contains structural deviations in authority allocation. Silence. Han doesn't interrupt this time. He listens. Calculates. Kang returns to his seat. Tonight, he says, I will ask a simple question. No one moves. If I were incapacitated tomorrow, he pauses. Who controls this company? No one answers, because the answer is now complicated. Han finally speaks. The board would determine temporary oversight. Would it? Kang asks. He slides the document across the table. Linda steps forward. Not invited, but not stopped. She reads clearly. The addendum bypasses unanimous board consent. Murmurs ripple. Director Cho looks at Han. Han remains composed. This is legal architecture, Han says. For efficiency. Efficiency, Kang repeats softly. Then he looks at Park. And who drafted the translated versions? Park's jaw tightens. I did. And who verified them? Park doesn't answer immediately. Linda feels it. That hesitation again. Small, but fatal. Director Han reviewed final structures. Park says carefully. There it is. Ownership of the structure. Shared. Not isolated. Kang folds his hands. I appreciate transparency, he says calmly. Transparency. The word feels sharp. Han leans forward slightly. If there are concerns, he says evenly, we can amend language. Amend. As if this is cosmetic. As if this is typography. Kang studies every face at the table. Not searching for guilt. Searching for fear. Director Cho avoids eye contact. Another board member shifts. One nods slightly toward Han. There. Alignment. Kang sees it. Linda sees it. Park sees it. And in that moment, Park realizes something. He is no longer the center of this. He was the tool. Han was the strategist. But now, the board is divided. And division reveals loyalty. Kang rises slowly. Tonight, he says, we do not amend. A pause. We identify. The word lands like a blade. Han's composure tightens. Identify what? He asks. Kang looks directly at him. Intent. Silence stretches. Linda feels her pulse in her ears. This is not a meeting. This is exposure. And then, a phone vibrates on the table. Not Kang's. Not Han's. Park's. The sound is small. But in a room like this, it detonates. Park freezes. Everyone looks at him. The phone vibrates again. Kang gestures lightly. Answer it. Park's throat tightens. It's nothing, he says. Answer it, Kang repeats. Park picks up the phone. Puts it to his ear. Says nothing at first. Then, his face drains. Linda watches the color leave him in real time. What? Park whispers. The room is silent. Every word is audible. What do you mean he's gone? Kang's eyes sharpen. Park lowers the phone slowly. Voice unsteady. Director Hans. Private security chief. A beat. He's missing. Silence. No one breathes. Han doesn't react immediately. Then, very slightly, his hand tightens on the table. Kang's voice is calm. Missing. Park nods weakly. He cleared out his office an hour ago. Linda feels it. The shift. The realignment. Someone moved before this meeting. Someone anticipated exposure. And then, Kang's phone vibrates. He looks down. Reads. His expression doesn't change. But his eyes darken. He looks up slowly. At Han. Park. At the board. And then, at Linda. We have a problem, Kang says quietly. And this time, it isn't about translation. No one speaks. Even the air feels suspended. Han doesn't ask what the message says. He already knows it won't be minor. Park looks like a man who just realized the floor beneath him was never stable. Kang places his phone face down on the table. Slow. Controlled. The shipment scheduled for Lagos tonight, he says calmly. It left early. A ripple moves through the room. Director Cho frowns. That's impossible. Clearance was approved for midnight. It departed at 8:17 p.m., Kang replies. Silence. Han's voice remains steady. That would require executive override. Yes, Kang says. It did. Every head turns. Executive override requires biometric authorization. Kang's biometric authorization. Park's breathing quickens. That's not possible, Han says carefully. My authorization key is stored under my supervision. Kang's eyes don't leave him. Was. A pause. Was. Han repeats. Kang leans forward slightly. The override code used to release the shipment was mine. The words land heavy. And yet, he continues, I did not authorize it. The room tilts. Because now this isn't internal restructuring. It's operational sabotage. Director Cho whispers, If the shipment clears, Linda finishes it silently. The succession clause activates. If Kang is declared operationally compromised, and if a major shipment moves under irregular authority, it creates regulatory vulnerability. Incapacitation doesn't have to mean physical harm. It can mean legal paralysis. Han's composure cracks by half a degree. Who accessed your credentials? He asks evenly. Kang studies him. That, he says quietly, is what we are about to discover. Park's phone vibrates again. He doesn't answer this time. He just stares at it. Linda's mind moves fast. Shipment, Lagos, Yoruba clauses, authority transfer upon operational compromise. She feels it. This isn't about removing you physically, she says softly. Everyone turns toward her. It's about creating a scenario where the board is forced to act. Silence. Han's eyes shift to her. Explain, he says. She doesn't hesitate. If the shipment clears under disputed authorization and regulators flag irregularities, she looks at Kang. You become a liability. Director Cho inhales sharply. And under the contingency clause, Linda continues. Temporary executive control transfers. To Han. The room understands it all at once. This wasn't insurance. It was timing. Kang's phone vibrates again. He doesn't look down this time. He looks at Han. You knew the shipment moved, Kang says quietly. Han doesn't deny it. He doesn't confirm it either. I was informed logistics were adjusted, he replies evenly. Adjusted? Kang asks. Accelerated. The words hang. Accelerated. Park finally speaks. I didn't authorize anything, he says quickly. I handled contracts, not shipments. No one looks at him. He's already shrinking in importance. Linda's heart pounds once. Hard. Because now she sees the full design. Park altered language. Han structured succession. The shipment creates regulatory exposure. Exposure activates contingency. Contingency centralizes control. No bullets. No assassins. Just paperwork. Kang stands slowly. The chair slides back with a soft scrape. Director Han, he says calmly. When were you informed of the shipment's acceleration? Han meets his gaze. 30 minutes ago. And you chose not to mention it. There was no indication of irregularity. Kang nods slowly. Who initiated the override? Han pauses. Not long, but long enough. The operations division, he says. Under whose instruction? Kang asks. Silence. Director Cho looks at Han. Another board member looks down. Park looks like he might faint. Linda realizes something chilling. The room is no longer unified. It's fragmented. And someone inside this building has already moved. Kang picks up his phone at last. Reads the message again. Then looks at Linda. Customs in Lagos flagged a discrepancy, he says quietly. What kind? She asks. The shipment manifest was altered. Silence detonates. Altered. The same word. Language. Again. Park shakes his head. I had nothing to do with manifests. Kang ignores him. He looks at Han. You built legal contingencies. Han says nothing. You positioned authority. Still nothing. And tonight, Kang says softly, a shipment moves under my credentials with altered documentation. The connection is unavoidable. Linda feels the weight of it. If the shipment is seized, if regulators freeze assets, if investigations open, Kang becomes compromised. The contingency activates. Han takes temporary control. All legally, all structured, all pre-written. No guns, just signatures. Kang's voice drops slightly. Did you anticipate I would discover the clauses before the shipment cleared? Han doesn't answer, because the answer is dangerous either way. Yes, Kang says quietly. You did. A heavy silence falls. Then, another phone vibrates. Not Park's. Not Kang's. Director Cho's. He looks down. Reads. His face pales. What? Kang asks calmly. Cho swallows. Customs detained the shipment, he says weakly. A beat. They are requesting immediate executive clarification. The air shifts violently, because that means regulatory scrutiny begins now. Tonight, before this meeting ends. Linda feels it in her chest. The trap wasn't for later. It was for this exact moment. The shipment leaves early. It gets flagged. The board is present. Authority questioned. Contingency clause activated under urgency. Han slowly exhales. Not panic. Acceptance. This is unfortunate, he says evenly. Unfortunate. Linda stares at him. He's still composed. Still balanced. Because if this plays correctly, he becomes the stabilizing force. Kang looks at the entire table, then at Han, then at Linda, and finally, he smiles. Not wide, not warm, controlled. Unfortunate. Kang repeats softly. He turns his phone around, faces it toward Han. On the screen, a live security feed, Lagos port, the shipment container, and standing beside it is a man speaking to customs officers. Calm, composed, holding documents. Linda leans forward slightly. Her breath catches, because she recognizes him. The private security chief who was reported missing. He isn't missing. He's at the port, and he's speaking. Kang looks at Han. You accelerated the shipment, he says quietly. You altered the manifest. You triggered regulatory review. Han remains silent. But you forgot something. The room tightens. Kang's eyes sharpen. I control who speaks at my ports. On the live feed, the security chief hands over documents. Customs officers step back. Phones ring. Barriers lift. The detained status disappears. Cleared. The shipment proceeds. Silence fills the room. Han's composure fractures. Just slightly, because the regulatory trap failed. Linda feels the shift like an earthquake. Han miscalculated. He assumed Kang wouldn't discover the clause in time. He assumed the shipment would trigger incapacity. He assumed control would transfer smoothly. He assumed. Wrong. Kang's voice is calm, almost gentle. You built insurance, he says. But you forgot to insure against me. The room is frozen. Director Cho looks at Han. Others shift uncomfortably. Park looks like he might collapse. Han finally speaks. You manipulated the review, he says quietly. Kang tilts his head. I anticipated it. A pause. You forced timing. Another pause. I forced exposure. Linda feels it. This was never reactive. Kang allowed the shipment to move. Allowed the clause to surface. Allowed the board to gather. He staged the confrontation. And now, every alignment in this room is visible. Kang steps closer to Han. Close enough that no one else can interrupt. You were patient, Kang says quietly. So was I. The silence that follows is suffocating. Because this isn't victory. Not yet. It's positioning. Han studies him carefully. Then, very slowly, he smiles. And that smile is different. Not defensive. Not nervous. Confident. Then you should check the second shipment, Han says calmly. The words land like a gunshot. Linda's blood runs cold. Kang's eyes darken. Second. Director Cho whispers. Han leans back in his chair. The one you don't control. Silence. No one moves. No one breathes. Because if there is a second shipment, and if it isn't under Kang's oversight, then the trap wasn't singular. It was layered. Linda feels her pulse hammering. Han's smile doesn't fade. You anticipated one move, he says quietly. But I never built only one path. Kang's phone vibrates again. Slow. Deliberate. He doesn't look at it immediately. He looks at Han. Then, at Linda. And in that look, she sees it. This isn't over. It just became bigger. Much bigger. The phone vibrates a third time. Kang finally glances down. His expression doesn't change. But the room feels like it's about to split open. Kang doesn't blink. He reads the message once. Then again. The room is silent enough to hear breath shift across the table. Han is still smiling. Not wide. Not arrogant. Certain. Second shipment? Director Cho whispers again. Kang finally speaks. Container 47B, he says quietly. No one else understands the weight of that number. But Han does. Linda watches it happen in real time. That tiny flicker in Han's eyes. Recognition. Confirmation. Where is it? Cho asks. Kang doesn't answer him. He looks at Linda. Then he turns the phone slowly. The screen faces the table. A live tracking map. Red. Flashing. Container 47B is not in Lagos. It's not at port. It's not in customs. It's already inland. Moving. Fast. Linda's stomach drops. Where is that route? She asks quietly. Kang zooms in. The line pulses. Then stops. Her breath catches. Because she recognizes the region instantly. Abuja, she whispers. The capital. Political center. Regulatory headquarters. Han leans back fully now. Relaxed. This one doesn't require port clearance, he says calmly. Silence detonates. Director Cho looks between them. What's inside that container? Han doesn't answer. Kang doesn't either. And that's worse. Linda feels it. The scope just expanded. The first shipment was bait. Legal exposure. Board pressure. Structured transfer. But the second isn't paperwork. It's leverage. Political leverage. If that container contains what she thinks it does, then this isn't just about executive control. It's about international vulnerability. Kang's voice lowers. What did you send, Han? Han tilts his head slightly. Insurance, he repeats. The word feels different now. Ugly. Linda's pulse pounds. If that container triggers a regulatory investigation in Abuja, she says carefully, it won't just compromise your authority. She looks at Kang. It will freeze operations across jurisdictions. The room understands. Asset suspension. Board emergency vote. Contingency activation. And this time, no biometric override can reverse it. Kang studies Han. You coordinated both shipments. Yes. You manipulated translation. Yes. You structured succession. Yes. Han doesn't hide it anymore. He owns it. Because stability, Han says evenly, requires inevitability. A long silence follows. And then, Kang smiles. Not cold. Not angry. Interested. You built inevitability, Kang says quietly. Yes. And you believe it's already in motion. Yes. Another pause. Then Kang lifts his phone again. A second message. Unread until now. He opens it. Reads. His expression still doesn't shift. But Linda sees it. The smallest tightening in his jaw. And that's when she knows. Whatever is in that container is bigger than contracts. Kang looks up slowly. At 9:42 p.m., he says quietly, Container 47B changed its destination. Han's smile fades by half a degree. That's not possible, he says. Kang turns the screen again. The map updates in real time. The red line shifts. Abuja disappears. A new route flashes. Back toward Lagos. Toward the same port Han thought he didn't control. Linda feels the air snap. What did you do? Han asks, for the first time losing smoothness. Kang's voice is calm. I let you believe I was reacting. A beat. But I was measuring. Silence thickens. Han's composure fractures. Just slightly. Who authorized the reroute? He demands. Kang's eyes don't leave his. You did. The words hit hard. Han goes still. Kang continues. You embedded override logic in every contingency clause. He taps the table lightly. I rewrote it. The room freezes. When? Cho breathes. When I learned to read what was hidden, Kang says. His eyes flick to Linda. Briefly. Meaningfully. Linda understands. He anticipated the trap the moment she exposed the first clause. He didn't stop the shipment. He studied the structure. He found the backdoor Han thought only he understood. And he turned it. But Han isn't finished. Not even close. He exhales slowly. Then, very slowly, he smiles again. This time wider. You're clever, Han says softly. But you still don't know what's inside. The room tightens. Because that That is the unknown variable. Kang's jaw tightens by 1 degree. What did you send? He asks again. Han doesn't answer. He looks at the board, then at Park, then back at Kang. And then he says something that shifts everything. It wasn't for you. Silence. Linda's heart pounds so loudly she's sure someone else can hear it. If it wasn't for Kang, Cho whispers. Then who? Someone else asks. Han's eyes move slowly, and they stop. On Linda. The room tilts. Linda feels the blood drain from her face. Han's smile sharpens. You exposed language, he says quietly. So I sent a message. The phone in Kang's hand vibrates again. One last time. He looks down, opens the message. A photo loads. Grainy. Night. A warehouse. And standing in front of a container is a familiar face. Linda's breath stops. Because she knows him. She hasn't seen him in 5 years. But she knows him. Her brother. Alive. The room dissolves into silence. Han's voice is calm. Insurance, he says softly, is not always corporate. Kang looks at Linda slowly, not confused, assessing. And in that moment, power shifts again. Because this was never just about contracts. Never just about succession. It was personal. Han leans forward slightly. You anticipated the board, he says. You anticipated logistics. You even anticipated regulatory timing. A beat. But you didn't anticipate history. Linda's hands tremble for the first time. Just slightly. The phone screen still glows. Her brother. In front of that container. And suddenly, the second shipment isn't political leverage. It's bait. For her. Kang looks at Han. Then at Linda. Then back at Han. And his voice drops. What have you done? Han's answer is simple. I gave her something to translate. Black silence. Now I need you to decide something. If you were Linda, would you protect Kang's empire? Or your brother? Because in part 2, we uncover what's really inside container 47B. Why Linda's brother disappeared 5 years ago. How Han knew about her past. And whether Kang saves the empire, or lets it burn. Part 2 drops this Saturday. And trust me, the second shipment changes everything.